FNCS Last Chance Major just wrapped up, and we now know every single team that will be participating in the huge $4 million LAN in October. And in this video, I'm going to recap everyone that qualified from EU and NA, as well as show you every single team that has made the global championship from every single region. So let's get right into it. Starting us off, I'm going to recap EU, and heading into the finals, the top 9 from EU would be advancing to the global championship. And leading the pack in first place was Mr. Savage and Vidil. They landed Racetrack after landing Naughty Nets all season, and they did not disappoint landing mid-map. I'm super glad we're going to have Mr. Savage at LAN again, especially since this could have been maybe Vidil's last tournament if they did not qual, as he was hinting at maybe quitting on Twitter beforehand. It would have been so weird if we had a huge LAN and no Mr. Savage, as it feels like he's been in every single tournament ever. Really happy that they clutched up and popped off. Moving on to second place was Nefrizzi and Howley. This is a crazy qualification, as Nefrizzi is the only player out of every single player qualified to the global championship that did not make a single FNCS Grand Finals this year. They played really consistent with fragging as well, getting a win with 7 elims, a 5th with 8 elims, and an 8th with 5 elims to really boost them into Copenhagen. Overall, a solid tournament. Moving on to third place was Kaizen and Clement. Outside of dying early in their last game off spawn, this duo made it to endgame every single game and had some really good games, including a 4th with 8 elims, a 4th with 5 elims, and a couple top 17s with elims as well. They also were in first place for a lot of the tournament and could have won if this didn't happen.
It'll last them about 1 or 2 zones. Has to be very careful here. It's all about blocking your front side and then moving, but not moving.
An incredible tourney by them nonetheless. Next in fourth place is an all-time great Hin and Vasquez. It's crazy to see Hin making LAN after basically being quit earlier this year. Hin is truly just so insanely talented, and him and Vasquez just put an insane run in finals, getting top 17 in every single game. Their best games were a 6th with 5 elims, an 8th with 2 elims, and a 9th with 4 elims. It's going to be sick to see Hin at LAN again after getting 6th place at last year's FNCS Invitational, and shout out once again to both him and Vasquez for going insane. Rounding out the last of the top 5 is Hin's Invitational duo Vortex and his duo Belusi, who actually played at last year's FNCS Invitational as well. Vortex and Belusi had some really solid games, getting 3 top 10s, including a 3rd, 6th, and 7th. So really a solid tournament and another LAN appearance for both of these players, so really well done. Now moving on to the rest of the top 9, we have Moneymaker and Fanayan in 6th place, Yanis and Rezon in 7th place, who had a crazy qual after being contested and clutching up their last 3 games to qual, getting an 8th, 7th, and 7th to finish the tourney and qualify to the LAN. In 8th place was Curb and Firehunter, and lastly rounding out the top 9 on EU was Steno and Lishi. I want to talk about the favorites going into EU, Pablo, Wingu, and Bevies, who came 11th place in finals in basically just 2 games. Their first 3 games were lost, all due to being down on Surge and having to fight for Surge and dying. Then they got it together in game 4 and got a massive 2nd with 80 limbs to boost them up the standings. But that momentum shift didn't really last long, as they got snuck up on off spawn in the next game and killed very early. And this made it come down to them needing a huge last game to qualify to the LAN, and they just barely missed it. They got an 80 limb win in the final game to come within just 4 points of 9th place, which is just 1 elim from qualifying to the global championship. A tough tournament for them, but almost one of the greatest one-day comebacks and finishes I've seen. Moving on to NA, we had an insanely close finish outside of one of the greatest performances we've ever seen from the winners, Peterbot and Byla. They made the lobby look like KNG scrims and rolled them in every single game. I knew going into this tourney they were going to win. They were landing mid-map castle split and getting the vault every single game, as well as also going for the island and getting that almost every single game. And if y'all remember the last time Peterbot and Byla were uncon at an absolute god split mid-map, they won FNCS back in Chapter 3 Season 2 very comfortably, so this was an easy pick to win. Their first 5 games were insane, getting 2 wins, a 2nd place, a 3rd place, and an 8th place, and with 2 games over 10 elims, and almost all 5 of those games were over 5 elims. It really makes you wonder why they split when they were this good. Hopefully we actually see this duo play LAN together this time. Next in 2nd place was Sinted and Polarized. They were not having the greatest tourney ever, but absolutely turned up in the last 2 games, getting a 2nd with 70 limbs and a 1st with 70 limbs as well. People were starting to call Sinted washed after not making 2 grands in a row and having a pretty subpar chapter for what he's normally used to, but he's still proving to be one of the top IGLs and booking him and Polarized ticket to LAN. Moving on to 3rd place was Death and Tahi. They got 2nd place in the first game and really stayed consistent throughout to finish in the top 3. Super happy for this duo, as they've always been contested this chapter, it feels, outside of being uncon in Season 1, where they finished 9th place. So it was really nice to see them make LAN. This also comes just 2 months after Tahi announced he would be quitting due to injury as well, so super insane to see him be able to come back just for FNCS and qualify to LAN. Next in 4th place was Clix and Epic Whale. Just like Death and Tahi, they had an insane start, winning game 1 and used this to stay ahead of everyone else for the rest of the tournament and qualify to LAN. It wasn't the greatest performance of all time as they only got 1 top 10 other than the win, but they did do enough to get the job done as expected for them. To not see Clix and Epic Whale out of major LAN would have been insane and weird to see, but Clix and Epic Whale got the job done, and Epic Whale is qualified to literally every single tournament ever, it feels like. Every FNCS, every LAN, it's truly insane. Lastly, rounding out the top 5 on NA was Quani and TK. Watching some of Quani's clutches where he's absolutely nothing in moving zones and somehow finds a couple elims was insane to watch. The way he salvaged some games where it looked like it was just fully over, and in the end it turned out to be massive for them. Congrats to both of them on making it to LAN. The rest of the top 8 on NA was Noxy and Crisp in 6th place, Pamstu and Fatch in 7th place while landing an entirely new split and splitting that split with another team and also being griefed by a team doing terrible. And then lastly in 8th place was Bully and Shadow. Overall an insane tourney that came down to the last game where it felt like every single team doing good was alive in the top 10 and they all needed to clutch up. An insane finish to a crazy season, and now let's look at every single team qualified to the FNCS Global Championship. This is all 75 teams from every single region and which season they qualified from. 51 out of the 150 players going to the Global Championship played at the FNCS Invitational, which is pretty crazy to think we have a lot of repeat qualifiers. If you guys want to see this Google Sheet as well as a link to the information on how the upper bracket and lower bracket works at LAN, I will have that down in the description below. I'm going to post a video talking about how the LAN works and how the brackets work as well once the prize pool gets released, so stay tuned for that video. That's going to do it for me and my FNCS Last Chance Major recap. If you guys are new to the channel, it would mean a lot if you hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like as well, as it helps with the video being pushed out to more people. Thank you all for 4,000 subs and all the support on all platforms lately. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.